actually. Hey guys, I return again with more spookies. I apologize if you can hear clinking in the background. That is my dog, Demona. She is having delicious treats. But for today's spooky Pokemon drawing, I went with Ralts. Ralts was actually the second most voted on the poll that I did on my Twitter. But the reason I ended up doing Ralts before Meloetta, which was the top most voted, was because my boyfriend also voted on the poll, and I found out he voted for Ralts. And when your boyfriend votes for something, that's it. It trumps all else. What'd you say? Yes, my vote is corrupted. This is political dissent. Corruption! I've already been tainted by bribery. But yeah, so the Ralts, I went for a creepy sort of haunted, murdered vibe. The Ralts has those pink little spiny things that poke out of its head, and I was like, oh, what could I do with those? Those look potentially interesting, and I was like, oh, they're like pinky, bloody typey colors, sort of. Like, maybe I could turn them into a blood thing. I know, I'll stab its head with a bunch of knives and hatchets. That's a great idea. So I frayed the bottom of Ralts's whatever it is. I guess it's the body, but I made it look a little more tattered, kind of like a ripped cloak or dress or something. You know, like the kind of stuff you see ghosts wearing all the time. And then I stabbed the hell out of Ralts's head with a bunch of kitchen implements and something generally used for chopping wood. I didn't actually like this piece for the longest time going in. I was very unsure on the sketch. This was actually, I think, like the third sketch attempt, and I just took the other ones out of the Speedpaint. That was just at the beginning of the live stream where I recorded it. But I wasn't terribly confident with the way the piece was going. And usually when that happens, I kind of scrap a piece. I don't always revisit it and redo it. But I didn't want to because I was already running out of time in October to do the spooky stuff I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, how can I improve this piece to turn it into something I really do like? And while I was, I think, having a shower, I kind of had like an epiphany, and I was like, oh, well, what if I change the lighting, and then I add like a really vibrant pink light, or pink or red or whatever, because the contrast for that, if you have a pink or red light, you're generally going to get green shadows. And I was like, oh, that could look cool. And that's actually a pretty common horror staple, is like the contrast between green and red. It's pretty common, especially in 80s horror. I don't think people use it as much nowadays, but it used to be very prevalent, and it's very effective, despite how Christmassy it might look. So, I decided I would go with that. Originally, the shading that I did for Ralts was all done in purple, so when I decided to change the lighting, I effectively just had to change the shading to green, because I did it on a different layer, and I think I had it on linear light. So I just, changed the color of the layer, switched the opacity and whatever. And it ended up working out, so I just kind of continued with it, and I added some grass and did up the ground, and I thought it looked pretty good. And I'm relatively satisfied with how it turned out. This one is actually of poster size, so I might actually turn it into a poster if enough people like it. I know at least one person said that they wanted to buy it, but she's my friend, and I don't know if I might just make it for her if nobody else wants it. Just give it to her as a Christmas gift or something. Blah! Excuse me. Oh, I was jumping up on my bed, getting comfy. Ow. 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 Ew. Ew. So, yeah, the whole purple here, that's basically going to be the shadows. Right now, I'm just taking out all of the parts that are not shadows, and that would actually be highlighted. I actually saw this in another speed painter's, well, another artist's speed paint, I should say, and I was like, that seems like an interesting tactic. I might give that a try. So I was actually trying out a lot of new things on this piece, and some things I think work better than others, but the whole filling everything in shadow and then just taking out the parts that don't have as much shadow, I kind of like how that looks, and I think it works especially well if you're doing something with a lot of heavy shadows. Obviously, it wouldn't exactly be worth it if you had very minimal shadow to something and then you just covered everything in shadow and then just erased what you didn't need. That just seems unnecessarily time consuming. So probably don't do something like that on just a general, oh, this character's out in the daylight type piece, because it's gonna waste a lot of your time. Got some blood splatter, fix up the head a bit. I actually used the eraser there when I wasn't intending to. That's a problem sometimes, is like I'll flip between the eraser and the brush so much that sometimes I lose track of which one I'm on. I thought I was using the brush tool and I was using the eraser tool, and I had the pixels locked so it wasn't erasing properly and it was erasing to like this faded blue underneath. Locking pixels can be weird. If you're trying to erase them, you generally don't want to have pixels locked if you're going to erase things, because it's still going to show up as something. It's just not going to be the color that you originally had there. It's weird, but I'm getting a little more used to it at the very least, which I'm happy about. Yeah, so I enjoy the haunted feel that this piece had, and I guess I want to kind of extend that into more spooky Pokemon pieces in the future. Plus, this one in particular, I want to get to the point where I can do full evolutions of spooky Pokemon, and I want the evolutions to be related to one another, which is why I thought the weapons sticking out of Ralts would be the most effective, because I figured with Ralts' evolved forms, I could just extend that, do extensions of it and just kind of expand on it. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do for, what's it called, Kirilla? The second evolved form. But I know it's got Gallade and Gardevoir. Gardevoir in particular, I have a pretty good idea for. Obviously, I don't have the time to do it now. But maybe I'll put that on the list for next Halloween, along with a bunch of the other Pokemon I have. I have a whole list of Pokemon, and whatever ends up going in the poll to see what everybody else wants to see is completely dependent on what I am in the mood to draw. So I have, I think, about 50 Pokemon listed with ideas. And the poll that I did this year, I think only had 8 or 9. I had like Turtwig, Hoothoot, Alolan Executor, because I thought I could do something really interesting with that. Obviously Ralts, Meloetta, Bidoof, because I have a stupid idea for that, but I think it'll be fun. But yeah, they were just ones that I had the most incentive to draw at that moment. So I was like, okay, I'll put it to a vote. I'll see specifically which ones people want to see. I've got the ideas, I've got the motivation. It's perfect. And then my boyfriend stepped in. It was like, well, Ralts wins. Okay. I mean, Ralts was already pretty up there. Ralts was the second most voted. Can you tell I do a lot of editing in the Ponder Sprocket videos? Or at least in the audio. So, fade out some of that highlights, make it really vibrant, and then add like a nice, smaller highlight on a different layer. Because after I faded everything else, I was like, okay, but I want like that one vibrant line to really stand out and separate the highlights from Ralts. I wanted it to be very like stark. We have a hole. I wanted it to be very like apparent, the separation line, because I feel like that can be very, very effective when you have a really, really harsh colored highlight, and I think it works a lot. So I'm pretty proud with overall how the piece came out. Not entirely sure about the knives. I'm not I don't draw knives very often, or weapons in general. I probably should practice that more. But I feel like the coloring maybe could have been done a bit better. I don't know, I guess I'll have to practice in the future with that sort of stuff. I do like a lot how the grass turned out. I was very, sometimes when you're working on a piece, you work on small pieces, and it doesn't really look good until the whole thing comes together. And for this piece, I definitely have that feel. Like, the grass looked weird when I did it, Ralts looked weird when I did it, when I sketched, everything looked weird. Ah, hit my desk. But once things started coming together, I started liking the piece a lot more. And granted, I'm gonna hate it by next Halloween because that's just how I am. And as I improve, I recognize more and more faults in my old artwork, and that just makes me hate my old artwork. But for this piece in particular, I'm happy with how it turned out. And it gave me some great ideas of what I can do to make the Meloetta piece that I still want to do a lot creepier. Because I feel like the Meloetta piece I've done so far isn't quite up to snuff, so now I have some new ideas for it that I think will really work. It's probably going to be a little more gory than this one, a little visceral, but I'm excited for it. And I'm happy with how this turned out, so that's good for me. Like one art piece I'm happy with. I'm okay with that. Yeah, and there we got the finished piece, couple more touch-ups, and voila, we got a spooky Ralts. I did a couple more touch-ups by the end and I signed it, but overall this is the finished piece. And there's my name. Haha. And now we have the spooky fan art feature. These ones are actually a lot more geared towards actual spooky things, which is pretty fitting. With the spooky art and the oceanic art, you guys really know me. First up, we have Treat Us Sweets or Face the Tricks by @FloraKnight1999. Honestly, the whole outfit they've drawn Ponder Sprocket in is so great. Fiend turned into a spooky head is really cute, and I love the color green, so I'm totes on board with hanging with a green witch. Next up is Ponder Sprocket versus the Griffen by @Pixeloon. Pixel was also the one who did the thumbnail for my second Spoctor drama video, and this was apparently based on a dream that they had. The Griffen itself just reminds me of the Fun Gang from the Labyrinth, which is super cool. Creeping up on us is Octo-Momma and Candibal Furret by @KJunkie. They even included my little cannibalistic candy corn Furret from my earlier spooky Pokemon art, which is just such a sweet touch, and I really love the dress. And we'll finish off with Spooky Boo by @OGDraws. We got ourselves a big pumpkin octopus and a spooky ponder witch. I am completely on board with this. You can see the finished spooky Ralts piece on my DeviantArt, and you can check my other stuff for random assortments like comics and sketches and pics of my doggo on Instagram. Okay, I'm done.